be talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Wednesday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is having a great middle of the week here in July. And I hope everybody's ready for what should be a pretty fun episode of the show. We're finally getting a little meat back on the bones here after a couple slow weeks in the world of college sports. We're going to open Big 12 Media Days is this week, and I just get the sense, listening to Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, talk, listening to some other people speak, we could be getting some more realignment news, and so we'll keep you updated on that. From there, we'll talk a little bit about those, I guess you just call them interesting comments from Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy, you heard what he said. If you didn't, we'll get into that. From there, we'll take a quick break. We will get to a little bit of hoops. Been a weirdly busy weekend in hoops. Cooper Flagg balls out with Team USA. What do I make of that? Is Duke all of a sudden maybe possibly a little bit better than we thought they were coming into the year? We will get an interesting recruiting update from AJ Dybantsa, the number one high school player in America. Made some interesting comments over the last couple days about where his recruitment stands. And we may even close. My buddy Zach Edey, you remember him. Guess who is right now the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year in the NBA? Boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we have a jam-packed show. Before we get started, as always, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, also make sure that you are following on social media and that you are following the YouTube channel. Click and subscribe. We are not slowing down. A lot of college hoops recruiting, a lot of college football. Yes, we are going to get back into college football. Cannot wait because we are about, 50 or so days away from that big week 1 slate, which means we're about 43 or so days away from week 0. And that'll be a great one as well. So with that said, let's get into today's show. There is no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, listen, I'll say this, is that talking season is here. We have officially reached the point where media days are here. We have the Big 12 this week. We have next week the SEC. We have the ACC as well, which is certainly interesting. The Big 10 following that. But the Big 12 actually opened things up on Tuesday. And let me just say this. If you read the tea leaves, if you're listening closely, if you're paying attention to what's going on in college sports, let me just say this. It feels like we could possibly be on the verge of another round of realignment. This is the never-ending question in college sports. Had somebody ask me literally today on Wednesday, Torres, when do you think this big breakoff is going to come, at least for major college football? What will it mean for everybody else? I think it's coming pretty soon, and it feels like kind of the kernels, the pebbles are starting to kind of get leaked out a little bit in terms of some people aren't happy, some people are ready to make a move, so let's go ahead and dive in. So again, Big 12 Media Days is this week. And what's interesting is if you go back through the history of realignment, at least the most recent wave, this is the time of year where news breaks. Remember, it was 2021. Texas and Oklahoma officially announced that they are leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. That broke at SEC Media Days in 2021. Last year, remember, Colorado shows up at Pac-12 Media Days, what ended up being the final Pac-12 Media Days. They say all the right things. Within a week, they have officially announced that they are leaving the Pac-12 for the Big 12 by the end of July, early August of last year. The Pac-12, as we knew it, ceased to exist. So it feels like something is coming. Seen some stuff from Greg Sankey, seen some stuff from Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, and there was actually an interesting update that came out on Wednesday of this week, so literally today. But before we get into it, let me just go ahead and give a backstory, because really right now it feels like this next big wave of realignment, it really does feel like it centers on essentially two schools, really one, as Florida State is very clearly leading the charge to get out of the ACC. Both Florida State and Clemson have filed suit against their own conference. Where this stems from, listen, I think in my opinion, this all really goes back to 3-4 years ago. I guess it was 3 years ago exactly, when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were leaving the SEC. And by the way, we're going to do just a little bit of background just to get everybody caught up, just to refresh your memory. I know that Florida State ACC, realignment battles aren't necessarily always at the front of your mind. But at the same time, this really started 2021 when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. It started this crazy moment in time where everybody's trying to figure out what's the next move, where can I end up, what's the safest spot to land. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. If you remember at the time, there was actually a thought the Big 12 wouldn't survive and that 3 or 4 teams from the Big 12 would go to the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, couldn't get his conference presidents on board. And so because of it, the Big 12 rallied, the Big 12 survived, and then they were the ones that really stuck the stake in the back of the Pac-12 a year ago. So in 2021, you started hearing these rumors. Florida State, Clemson, they're not happy in the ACC. My buddy Mark Ryan, who used to host radio in South Carolina Broadcaster of the Year, shout out to him. He at one point put out a tweet in 2021 that said Florida State and Clemson have reached out to the SEC. At the time, all the big J's, they were furious. This is nonsense. This is ridiculous. And then basically every move that Florida State has made since then, alongside with Clemson, has really led to, it is pretty obvious they're trying to get out. First time that I really remember everything really starting to ramp up, felt like it was about 18 or so months ago. I remember 2 Februaries ago. So not this past February, the February before, but there was a big report about Florida State school president and their AD essentially having a meeting in which they basically explained why, first off, it started as we need more money from the ACC. And I should even backtrack a little bit, right? So this is all really about dollars and cents, is that with the state of college sports as it is, the SEC, the Big Ten, both conferences are set to make about $70 million a year in TV money. As Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, said at the media availability on Tuesday, he said, we have established ourselves as the third best conference. They're making about 40, and the ACC is making closer to 35 to 40 million a year. And so everybody in the ACC is mad because they're stuck in this TV contract through 2036, essentially another 12 years in this awful deal. But Florida State, and to a smaller degree, Clemson, are especially mad because Florida State and Clemson generate the vast majority of the money of the revenue that the conference produces from TV. Florida State, as I said, about 2 Februaries ago, had this big meeting and all the documents got leaked out where they basically said every big TV rating the ACC does, Florida State is involved. So Florida State LSU the last 2 years, Florida State Clemson, Florida State Notre Dame, whoever they're playing, they are the biggest draw in the league. And so it started with Florida State basically saying, wait a second now, we're already $35+ million behind the Big Ten and the SEC every single year, by the way. So it's not like they just fall behind 35 million. They're 35 million behind the SEC and the Big Ten every single year. And that keeps kind of compounding season over season over season. So they're not happy about it. The original complaint from Florida State was, we want a bigger chunk of the ACC pie. In other words, why are we making the same money as Boston College and Pitt and Wake Forest and bluntly these tiny schools that nobody cares about? And so you see that. Then from there, it becomes, we just want out. And of course, a few months ago, as I said, that was when both Florida State and Clemson filed suit against the ACC, basically saying this grant of rights, this TV contract through 2036, we can't do this, we want out. And so I bring it up because that's the background. And this week, it just feels like there's just a lot of stuff going on, okay? So first off, Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, kind of had an interesting little smirk when he was asked about further realignment, further expansion, further whatever, because at Big 12 Media Days a year ago, he was asked about realignment. This was when the Big 12 was still at, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. They have these 4 new schools. And Brett Yormark kind of winked and said, we're open for business. And so why that matters this week is because he was asked about realignment again on Tuesday at his press conference, and he said, we're still open for business. Think it's also worth noting Greg Sankey, his tune has really changed in the last couple months. You go back to SEC Media Days a year ago, he said our full focus is on our 16 members, including Texas and Oklahoma, who are joining this year. Well, fast forward to the SEC meetings in the spring, and he had a little bit of a different tone, kind of trying to not dip his toe in it. He said, we respect that there are agreements and situations that prevent a lot of movement, so our focus has been on our 16, but I pay attention. We've seen media members come out and say it feels like something's coming. Josh Pate, CBS Sports 24/7, said within the last week, he said, I'm hearing, and I don't want to speak for Josh, but on his own show, he said, I'm hearing something's coming in July. And again, it feels like something is, especially, and this is the important part, and this is the update, those lawsuits that Florida State and Clemson filed, we found out this is boring legalese, but it's kind of important. Florida State filed a lawsuit against the ACC in Florida, Clemson the same in South Carolina. And a judge basically came out on Wednesday and said, wait a second now, the only place that they can do this trial is in North Carolina because that's where the ACC is headquartered. So we know Florida State wants out. We know North Carolina wants out. But the counter to that is obviously it will be a favorable setting if and when they go to court. And so to me, what becomes super interesting, what are these next few weeks and what do these next few months look like from both Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC perspective? We have heard that Florida State is potentially willing to take on private equity money because, to be clear, they can't just leave the ACC. As I said, the TV contract, the grant of rights runs through 2036, and so they would owe literally hundreds of millions of dollars if they decide to leave or if they force their way out. The ACC kind of owns all their TV rights, at least their home games for the foreseeable future. And so they're going to lose tens of millions of dollars, eventually becoming hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I just bring it up because Florida State's kind of got to figure out a way to recoup that money. And so we've heard about private equity. We've heard about Saudi oil money. And it's just crazy that this is where we are in the current state of college sports. The ironic part, and this is the part that I think is interesting. And by the way, I don't think this was helped a few months ago when, or about a year ago. Well, I guess it was 6 months ago when Texas or when Florida State was left out of the college football playoff. I think that made Florida State feel like we are definitively in an inferior league. We are definitively behind the 8 ball. I think it was just bad luck because I think if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt and they destroy Louisville in the ACC championship game, and they destroy Florida in the last game of the season, they're probably in the playoff. But I bring it up because what will be interesting to see is what happens next. Florida State clearly wants out. But as I just said, the wild part about all of this is that the system is actually very much in favor of Florida State right now as we speak. And I bring it up because if you look at the situation with Florida State and Clemson, what I find interesting is if Florida State actually just sticks it out, you know who I think actually has the most advantageous path to the college football playoff going forward? It's going to be Florida State and Clemson. They are 2 programs along with Miami that are operating at a completely different level than everybody else in the ACC. And so remember, in this new 12-team college football playoff, at least right now, the top 5 conference champions not only get an automatic bid, but the top 4 get a bye in the first round. And so you're sitting there, you're looking at it, and you're sitting there saying like, well, wait a second now. Them or Clemson's basically going to get a bye into that final 8 every single year if they just stick it out. But Florida State is so caught up on the money and the respect and the prestige and the this and the that. I think they're going to cut off their nose to spite their face. Also worth noting, even if they get out of the ACC, somebody's got to want them. Right now, the SEC does not seem interested, and I think they would get pushback internally the same way they got pushback from Texas A&M when Texas wanted to join the league. I don't think Florida would be happy with Florida State coming in. I don't think South Carolina would be happy with Clemson coming in, especially as we get deeper into this new era of college football where so much of the power is going to be consolidated in both the SEC and the Big Ten. From the Big Ten perspective, listen, that has been, believe it or not, the more likely landing spot from the beginning. But I will say, I heard Paul Feinbaum say this the other day, and I know Paul says a lot of crazy stuff, but this one didn't feel too crazy to me. He said point blank, he's like, well, from my perspective, I don't see the Big Ten being a fit because there are those academic hurdles. It is a fair or not, make fun of it if you will, but those school presidents take their academics seriously. And the 4 schools that were added, 3 of them are elite academic schools. UCLA is a great academic school. Washington's a great academic school. USC is a great academic school. And so Florida State might not be the perfect fit. I'm not telling you it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that's what we hear. And so I just bring it up because it'll be fascinating to see what happens next. But between Brett Yormark's comments that we're still open for business, between the lawsuit kind of coming to fruition in North Carolina over the last couple days, it feels like this thing is ramping up. People are talking about it, and we'll see as we get into SEC Media Days next week. And then, oh, by the way, ACC Media Days. You feel bad for Mike Norvell and Dabo Swinney because those things are kind of out of their pay grade, but those are the ones that are going to be asked about it. And it'll be interesting to see because, like I said, underneath the surface, it feels like something is bubbling. Really quickly, as I said, it is packed Big 12 Media Days right now. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I would sit there and say that a lot has come out. By the way, I do see somebody saying talk Deion. I was actually hoping that Deion would say something interesting at Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday, but he's been pretty quiet. The only real noteworthy thing that I feel like has come out of Big 12 Media Days so far is our buddy Mike Gundy. So listen, Mike Gundy had some comments on Tuesday. They made a lot of rounds, a lot of noise. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it just because bluntly, like, I'll be honest, like when I talk about stuff on this show, I always want to make sure it's something interesting, something unique, and that I have a unique perspective. Okay. There's nothing interesting about, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an example, saying UConn's the best program in college basketball. Yeah, everybody kind of knows that. That Team USA is going to win gold, that Patrick Mahomes, oh my God. You know, like if you try to debate your buddies, well, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. Your buddies would all be like, yeah, no crap. What's your next hot take, you know? And so I bring it up because Mike Gundy, on a much more serious note, had a kind of a foot in his mouth moment at Big 12 Media Days on Tuesday. Again, just not going to spend too much time on it because it just doesn't feel like something that's a super interesting thing to talk about. But his star player, Ollie Gordon, of course, most of you know, the leading rusher in all of college football a year ago, was at Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon, an incredible player, had an incredible home stretch. And I'll say this too, Oklahoma State actually was a very good team last year. People forget they beat Oklahoma in what was the final bedlam, at least for the foreseeable future. And they were the ones that played Texas in the Big 12 championship game. And so I bring it up because about a week ago, Ollie Gordon got arrested for underage DUI. There's nothing funny about it. There's no hysterical take. I'm not going to try to be clever or interesting, but I just bring it up because Mike Gundy did not throw Ollie Gordon off the team, did bring him to Big 12 Media Days, and did have some very interesting things to say. Okay, so a lot of different quotes made the rounds, but this was the one that certainly caught everybody's attention. Asked about the situation, Mike Gundy said this is an exact quote. He said, "So I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Assuming, of course, because Ollie Gordon is under the age of 21. And so Mike Gundy said, like in Oklahoma, it's 0.08%. And Ollie was at 0.1%. So I looked it up, and it's based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought, really, 2 or 3 beers or 4? I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought, I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life, and you know it was just fine. So I got lucky. People got lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, you're lucky you got out light." And so this is where it becomes tricky for me as a broadcaster, because ultimately, I don't think there's really anything interesting for me to say. We all, listen, again, there's nothing for me to add to the conversation. It was a weird thing for Mike Gundy to say. He basically, let me even backtrack. I think most of us would acknowledge that, especially in a different era, especially in a pre-Uber era, there might be a time, go out to dinner with your wife, with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, have a beer or two, get behind the wheel. If you didn't ever in your life, good for you. But I think everybody's probably had that moment once or twice, maybe more in their lives, where they said, you know what, I'm fine. I just had a beer or two. And so on the one hand, I don't necessarily, I can't say that I'm perfect. What I will also say, and I try to defend coaches on all this stuff because I think they're not public speakers by definition. Their job is to coach football. Don't think this was Mike Gundy's finest moment. And I do think, as the head coach of a major program, definitely not the message you want to send. Now, I have no problem having his players back. I think it's dumb. Do I think Ollie Gordon should have been thrown off the team and forever banished to whatever? No, I don't. I think there are people that have done way worse things, way worse crimes, that are currently playing college football, that are currently in the NFL, whatever. Not condoning Ollie Gordon's behavior, but go look at Joe Mixon's history. Go look at what Tyreek Hill did to his pregnant girlfriend 1,000,000 years ago. But for a coach to say, I've done that 1,000 times, it's just not a good look. And so there's really nothing else for me to add. It wasn't a good look. The only thing that I did like, once Mike Gundy made the decision to bring him back, to not kick him off the team, whatever, I like that he brought him to Big 12 Media Days. And Mike Gundy actually said this. He said, look, we're in an NIL era now. You guys are making a lot of money. And the one thing I do give him credit, he basically told Ollie Gordon, I'm not going to hide you. I'm not going to pretend like you didn't do something wrong. I'm not going to answer questions for you. Brought Ollie Gordon to Big 12 Media Days. Ollie Gordon had to answer for his own behaviors. And once you deem that Ollie Gordon is staying on the team, I like that decision from Mike Gundy. I think too often, again, what he said, college football players, college basketball players, college softball players, baseball players, they're paid now. They make money now. They're professionals now. Treat him as such. Ollie Gordon came. He apologized for his behaviors. But this Mike Gundy quote was very weird, and also worth noting, by the way, he later had to obviously run it back and recant it. Just a weird thing for him to say. And I think it goes without saying that I just not a good thing for a coach to say. With that said, let's go ahead and take a quick break. I see Leslie saying, talk Coach Prime. Coach Prime's got to say something interesting, but we're going to ramp up football, and trust me, we are going to be talking a lot of Coach Prime. What we're going to do, though, take a quick break, going to come back, talk a very interesting week for our buddy Cooper Flagg. Did you see what happened there? We'll talk some AJ Dybantsa, who had a very interesting recruiting update, and we will talk my main man, Zach Edey. How about that guy? Apparently, he is the NBA Rookie of the Year frontrunner right now. That's interesting. Quick break. Be right back. Before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. I'm back. Gonna be back. So do want to go ahead and get to a little bit of an interesting story that emerged on Monday night. And I got to be honest, it isn't very often that something happens, especially in kind of the areas of expertise that I like to think I maybe know a little bit about what I'm talking about, but it isn't very often. So college football, college basketball, etc. But it isn't very often that a story emerges where I am genuinely shocked by the reaction to something. But that's exactly what happened on Monday night. And it involves, if you're watching on YouTube, the guy on that lower bottom part of your screen, Cooper Flagg. So Cooper Flagg, I think everybody kind of knows who he is, but this is a kid we actually talked a lot about on this YouTube channel and the podcast. Probably about a year ago, we really started talking about him because it was right around a year ago. Everybody knew how good he was. Everybody knew how talented he was. And it was about a year ago at Peach Jam where you started to hear the rumors that he was officially going to reclassify, that he would be a senior this past year, and that he would be enrolling in college in the fall of 2024. Well, that's exactly what happened, and we covered it kind of on this show. We talked about the reclassification. We talked about his visit to UConn. We talked about his visit to Duke. We talked about his commitment to Duke. But this kid is largely believed to be not just a really good high school player, but the best player in the 2024 class, the definitive number one pick in the 2025 class. And where it gets interesting is he is believed by many to be a generational talent, the kind of kid that this isn't just another dude that's ranked number one in the class, not even a kid that is a number one overall pick type talent, but one of the best high school players we've seen in decades, the kind of guy that can change a franchise. And as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, a guy that teams actually position themselves to get the number one pick. In other words, we got 5, 6, 7 teams in the NBA tanking this year for the right to draft. So that is who Cooper Flagg is. And I think you probably know why I'm talking about him today. But as I said, Monday night, it's always right after we finish the Aaron Torres pod, but we finished the show Monday night live on YouTube. And these videos start to emerge of Cooper Flagg playing for the Team USA Select team. And so Team USA Select, so we obviously have the Olympics coming up. Paris is in just a few weeks. LeBron James is on the Olympic team. Steph Curry's on the Olympic team. Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, on and on. And so what Team USA does, they always put together what they call the Select team, which is kind of these up-and-coming rising stars that they kind of want exposed to Team USA basketball. And so generally, it's a group of guys that just finished their rookie year, second year, young players that in theory could be part of the Olympic cycle 4 years from now, the next Olympic cycle. And this year, they included Cooper Flagg as part of this. He became the first active college player to be part of this program since about 2013, I believe, is the last time that happened, which is kind of crazy because it was Doug McDermott who was going into his, I believe, senior year of college. But I just bring it up because Cooper Flagg about 3 or 4 weeks ago was named a part of this Team USA Select team. But when it happened, it was kind of this feel good. Oh my goodness, it's so cool. He's part of it. He gets to go and hang out and rub elbows with the stars. But nobody really expected for him to actually be talked about as part of this Team USA Select team, which scrimmages with Team USA. So that, of course, brings us to Monday night because as I got off air, all these videos start emerging of Cooper Flagg not only playing against Team USA, but oh, by the way, I don't want to say dominating, but here's the bottom line. People that were in the building actually used the word dominating. So he's playing for Team USA Select against the Team USA team with LeBron, Steph, again, Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, whatever. And the media was able to see the last 10 minutes or so. Here is what one media member said. This is Adam Himmelsbach. I apologize if I butchered his name, of the Boston Globe. He tweeted, Maine's Cooper Flagg is, quote, dominating this USA scrimmage. Turnaround jumper over Drew Holiday, 3 in Anthony Davis's face, and soaring and 1 putback as he's knocked to the ground. And so again, to bring it back to what I just said, it's not often that I am genuinely surprised by a story in the world of college basketball and how big it gets, but I don't think there's any doubt that this story is huge. Was working out on whatever it was Tuesday morning. Skip Bayless and Rachel Nichols and Keyshawn Johnson are talking about it. Colin Cowherd's fill-in a few hours later, we're talking Cooper Flagg to lead the show. So this story is huge. Let's break it down. And I got to be honest. Does this change how I feel about Cooper Flagg and Duke a little bit going into next year because we are a college sports show? I got to be real. Duke might be even better than I thought they were going to be going into next year, and I have them as a top 10 team. So let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, Cooper Flagg's a really good player, okay? 6'8", 6'9". First of all, love that he's from Maine. I grew up in Connecticut. Us New England guys got to stick together. And the story being from Maine, it's unbelievable. He goes to Montverde. But the thing that I really love about watching him is he's not just like a 6'9" dude that can shoot threes or a 6'8" dude that can shoot threes. He can pretty much do it all on the court. He's a kid that can handle the ball, can get a rebound, rip and run, can lead the fast break, sets up others. He's a guy that can catch the ball in the high post, find a cutter for an easy layup. Like everything that you want out of a player, he can do. This isn't just a 6'8", 6'9" dude that can shoot threes. And I actually thought Jaime Jaquez, one of the other players from the Team USA Select team, probably described the whole situation about as well as he could, as possible. This is how Jaime Jaquez described Cooper Flagg's game. To be able to do what he did, not even playing in a college game yet, let alone an NBA game, there's no fear. It's relentless. And the thing you can tell about him is that he just has a knack and a will to win. This is the part that I love. He said he doesn't need the ball. He just finds a way to it, and the ball finds him. That's something you can't teach. He's just got a great feel for the game. Listen, that's exactly how I would describe Cooper Flagg. By the way, everybody else that was part of that event had great things to say. Devin Booker raved about him. Jalen Duren, who was part of Team USA Select, raved about him. But that's the thing about Cooper Flagg. 6'8", 6'9". Yeah, he can step in and shoot threes. But as you saw in those highlights, he's a guy that can attack the boards and have putbacks. He's athletic. He can jump. He can make plays for others. As I said, he can rip and go. So he's not the kind of guy that just needs the ball in his hands to make himself productive or to make others around him better. And so when I look at him, when I look at what he did, I got to be honest, I do think, in my opinion, it probably raises a little bit the ceiling that I was kind of thinking for Duke this year. And I got to be honest, listen, I've seen him in person. He's incredible. But as a guy who covers college hoops, I have become a little bit probably jaded by the high-profile freshman, All-American, the best sense guy. Because since I've been doing this, it feels like every 2 years there's the best sense this, the best sense that. And it's no disrespect, but rarely do these things work out. And so, and by the way, when I say that, I don't even mean like somebody's a bust, but like Andrew Wiggins was like the best since LeBron, right? At the time. And Andrew Wiggins was a really good college player, but he wasn't like unbelievable. He wasn't a game changer. Kansas didn't get out of the first round of the tournament. And so I just bring it up because the number of dudes that really step in from day one, are the best player in the sport, dominate, take over games, it's few and far between. Zion Williamson, certainly a few years ago. Anthony Davis in 2012. John Wall in 2010. Probably dating back to Kevin Durant in 2007, Derrick Rose in 2008. But these guys don't come along every single year. And just because you're the number one player in a class, just because you're the number one player in America, even just because you're the number one pick in the draft, doesn't mean you're going to be that guy. But if Cooper Flagg is stepping on a court with the best players in the NBA, and he's at minimum looks like he belongs and looks comfortable, I'm sorry. That means that he can absolutely be the best player in college basketball next year, and he can absolutely maybe even elevate Duke further than I thought. Because what I would say is, listen, we haven't done our offseason grades piece yet for Duke, but I actually really do like what John Shire did this offseason, because he's still recruiting the one and dones. He's still recruiting the 5-stars, but he did the nice balance of the number one recruiting class in the country with 4 or 5 guys out of the portal with a couple of returnees. Now Duke's got a very interesting team. It's all going to obviously revolve around Cooper Flagg, but first off, you have the 2 returnees, Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. I know Tyrese Proctor hasn't totally clicked yet. I know that, he was a projected 1 and done, doesn't happen. A projected 2 and done doesn't happen. First round pick hasn't happened yet, but he's turned into a very good college player. Not great, but good. 10 points, 4 boards, 4 assists last year as a sophomore. And remember, he reclassified, so he really could have been a freshman a year ago. Caleb Foster's returning, had a good freshman year. And then I really do like the transfers that they brought in to kind of bring that veteran presence to that Duke locker room. Mason Gillis. Yes, I was number 1 Purdue critic during the season, but I love what Mason Gillis did for that team and what he will do for Duke this year. Veteran dude, 3-point shooter, banger down low, locker room presence. Talk to him at the Final Four. Just seems like a well-balanced kid that kind of gets the big picture of college basketball. Zion James, 14-point-a-game scorer from Tulane. Big, athletic wing. I think behind Cooper Flagg, he might be the second leading scorer on that Duke team. And then you have a couple other transfers, and you have the other freshmen that are going to be playing around Cooper Flagg. Isaiah Evans, Con Knipple, really good 3-point shooter. You have Patrick Ngamba. You have the kid from the Africa program, the basketball. Why am I blanking on the African Basketball Academy kid? I don't want to trip over his name. The point I'm trying to make, this is going to be a really good team, but I do think that Cooper Flagg is that dude that can elevate the entire team once they step on the floor, and maybe to even a level that we weren't expecting. And so what I would wrap by saying, this is big. And it's big because now the casuals have a reason to tune into college hoops. And to be clear, I'm not the guy that hates when casuals tune in, unless it's a JJ Redick parachuting in and talking about how much the sport sucks. Yes, that happened about 4 or 5 years ago, as has been well documented. But I love when there's something on a national scale that people are interested in college basketball to talk about. And listen, love my UConn Huskies, graduated from UConn. It's been awesome watching that back-to-back national championship run. But they've been really good the last 2 years, but 2023 was a little bit of a surprise run. And then 24, they were so dominant that I don't know that people could kind of wrap their arms around a story. And so now, thanks to the Team USA Select stuff, you have a year of buildup with Cooper Flagg. You have a year of buildup that people are going to want to see this kid, get to know this kid. Is he as good? Is he is he really worth the Brooklyn Nets, the Utah Jazz, whoever, my team tanking for this kid? NBA people will be watching. College basketball people will be watching. I was watching Skip Bayless's show while I was working out on Tuesday morning. He said, I'm going to watch every Duke game. And it's like, I don't think he's probably going to watch every Duke game. Don't know if he's going to be watching like the Coastal Carolina game on a Tuesday, on a Monday night when there's Monday Night Football. But he's going to tune into the big ones. Rachel Nichols was on set. She said the same. This is a good thing for college basketball. So I'm really excited. And I can honestly just say I am genuinely surprised at how big this got and how much interest there is in Cooper Flagg after that Team USA. All right, we got two more basketball topics before we get out of here. Appreciate everybody joining us here on a Wednesday, middle of the week, middle of July. The content keeps rolling on, though. So let's go ahead and hop into what I think are two very interesting and very different stories that have emerged over the last couple days that I think are at least worth discussing very quickly. And the first one that I want to start with, Cooper Flagg, of course, was the number 1 high school player in the class of 2025. Or 2024, excuse me. But I bring it up because the number 1 player in the class of 2025 is, of course, AJ Dybantsa. So AJ Dybantsa just finished playing for this incredible Team USA U17 team. Okay, if you didn't see this team, everybody's freaking out about the state of basketball in the United States at this moment in time, okay? Team USA basketball goes to the U17 championships with AJ Dybantsa, Cameron Boozer, Carlos Boozer's son, Caleb Holt, great player in 2026, Brandon McCoy, great player in 2026, on and on. I'm missing a couple guys, Koa Pete, who's from Arizona. They won that tournament by, if I read it correctly, an average of 64 points per game. Okay, so USA basketball is in great shape, and AJ Dybantsa, to me right now, is the face of everybody that isn't in college, guys like Cooper Flagg. Well, I bring it up because as good as he's been, there really haven't been very many tangible recruiting updates as far as where he's interested in, where he's going, all of that. Last year, he took a visit to USC, but remember, USC staff has changed over just in the last few months. Andy Enfield out, Eric Musselman in. And so I don't know that Andy Enfield and his staff at SMU are going to be able to close the deal. Also, Dybantsa visited producer Matt's alma mater in Auburn. But I bring it up because it's very quiet. Producer Matt, by the way, behind the scenes shaking his head as if he went to the biggest basketball power in the world. Pretty sure producer Matt couldn't give away tickets when he was there. Neither here nor there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Dybantsa because he's going into his senior year. He is a highly coveted player, and everybody's trying to figure out, like, where is this guy going to go? Well, on, I guess it was Wednesday, he sat down with Kristen Peak. Now, it may have been before, but I saw the video kind of circulating on social media. He had some interesting things to say about his recruitment. Here is the video of him with Kristen Peak.
And what's important to you?
My dad, I have no college coaches' numbers.
Okay.
My dad talks to all the coaches. If they want to talk to me, he'll ring me onto a call. But that barely happens. So when around Peach Jam, right after Peach Jam, I'll talk to coaches like through his phone, and then we'll narrow it down to probably like 8 around there.
That's when you want to narrow it down, is after Peach Jam?
Yeah.
And then are you going to take any visits this fall?
Then that would be the visits will be in the fall, September, October-ish.
Any schools you want to get to, do you think?
I mean, not really, because I don't really talk to the coaches, so I don't know what they have to offer. And I mean, I can watch them on TV all the time, but like you got to hear them speak and like what I would fit in their play style.
Yeah. And your dad, does he talk about the possibility of going and play overseas at all?
Oh no, I'm going to college.
Okay. All right. Shut that down.
So there you have it. AJ Dybantsa talking to Kristen Peak. First of all, the thing that stands out, a couple things stand out. One, there is the conversation about the dad. Now let me, because when I was talking to producer Matt about this before the show, let me defend the dad a little bit, because I think you hear that and people are going to assume, oh my God, it's LeVar Ball 2.0 or it's this or that. Listen, AJ Dybantsa's dad, by all accounts, listen, let me even backtrack. He's a cop, okay? And he's not only a cop, he's a cop in Brockton, Massachusetts. That's where the family's from. And so if you know anything about Brockton, tough, hard scrabble, that's where Marvin Hagler is from. That's where Rocky Marciano is from. The high school team, their nickname is the Boxers, okay? So if you're a cop in there, you're a no-nonsense guy. And so I'm going to defend the Dybantsa family because I saw a lot of commentary about the comments about his dad. The dad, to me, my understanding is great dad, very involved. And he's basically told AJ, let me handle everything off the court. You focus on basketball. So it's not a big deal that he hasn't talked to a ton of college coaches right now. But what I do think is interesting about this is that it feels like the recruitment is very, very, very wide open. As I said, took an unofficial to USC, took an unofficial to Auburn. He did take an unofficial, by the way, to BYU. But it feels like it's wide open. He's going to cut down his list. And if you're one of those schools that's in the mix, you got to feel kind of good that if your coach presents things the right way, if your coach is able to sell the program the right way, the developmental program the right way, that you could realistically have a shot with this kid. Now, because I know how all this works, and because I know all of you are going to ask, I think it's naive of anyone to say that there are leaders or there are people that are definitively going to be in the mix. Like I don't think we're at that point. But since I know you guys and girls are going to ask, do you think there are 3 schools? Like if he's going to cut his list here to 8 in the coming weeks, by the way, Peach Jam is this weekend. Posted it on social media, but I went down to USC practice on whatever it was, Wednesday morning. The whole staff was headed down to Peach Jam this week. So Peach Jam's coming. He's going to cut his list. I'm rambling. I'm not going in any direction. Let me get back on track. But what I do think is that if we're talking about schools that are realistic for him, there are 3 to me that I feel pretty confident in saying I feel pretty good that they are going to make a final cut for AJ Dybantsa. What are the 3 schools? Couple stand out. One, listen, you can love them or you can hate them. I think Duke's going to make the cut. Duke is always in the mix for all of these elite guys. We can criticize. It's not Coach K. It's not the same. John Shire isn't the same. What the heck happened with Kyle Filipowski? Something we probably should have talked about on this show, but we never did. But at the same time, Duke is still a mega brand. They develop their pros. Jason Tatum's maybe the best player in the world right now, or he's the best player on the team that just won the championship. And I also think it's worth noting, like it hasn't slowed down in the post Coach K world. And beyond that, a couple other things stand out. One, I think we feel pretty good that the Boozer twins are going there, Cameron and also Caden Boozer. And AJ Dybantsa just proved that he could play with them. So I don't think that's a factor at all. But the one thing I will say, and I do think this is interesting, and I do think it goes back to the segment that we just had half a second ago. That's this, is that Cooper Flagg is going to be on campus this year. And so if Dybantsa is making his visits post Peach Jam, probably in the fall when everyone's back on campus for football games, he's going to be making those visits right as the Cooper Flagg hysteria starts. And so if you're Duke and you are showing the world that you are profiling this number 1 player in America, you are giving him a huge stage. Everybody cares about Duke basketball. He is the biggest story, he being Cooper Flagg. You're going to be able to sell, hey, you come here, we're going to be able to do the same thing for you next year. Now, again, a little bit complicated with the Boozer twins. Cameron Boozer is probably the number 2 player in America. I think in most years, Cameron Boozer would be the number 1 player in the country. But I just bring it up because I do think Duke is one of the schools that's going to be in the mix. Beyond that, I'll say this, another one. You can love them, you can hate them. I feel pretty confident that Arkansas is going to be in the mix as well, because the bottom line is, listen, you can love Cal, you can hate him. Every time I say something positive, people yell at me, whatever, I don't care. But the one thing you can't deny, that dude prepares kids for the pros. You can sit here and tell me, oh, what about this guy? What about that guy? Reed Sheppard. Everyone told me all year how he was completely misused. Ended up as the number 3 pick in the draft. What else do you want? Rob Dillingham, top 10 pick. Cal did his job. And you go through the list of all these guys that he's put in the pros, all the money they've made. Cal is still using that. My guys have made billions of dollars with a beeline. I heard him say it the other day on McAfee. It's like, Emmanuel Quickly just signed a huge extension. Tyrese Maxey just signed a huge extension. Malik Monk just signed a huge extension. So all those guys are making more money. And even if the tournament results haven't been what his previous school expected, it doesn't change the fact that he develops pros really well. I think it's also worth noting, he's another one. His brand is going to be on full display this summer and the fall. Why the summer? He's got 3 guys on Team USA. Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker. Also got 3 guys on Team Canada, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Trey Lyles. Now, I know when I say that, oh, well, what did he do with them? It's like, that's not the conversation. First of all, Anthony Davis won a championship. A bunch of the other guys made a Final Four. A bunch of the other guys made an Elite 8. But I just bring it up because this is his reputation. It's what he does. He has the previous relationship. And I feel pretty good that Arkansas is going to be in the mix. The last team that I would feel pretty good if I was a fan of that school, and it just so happens that I am, it's the UConn Huskies. Because, listen, with UConn, we've talked about it. We've done like 8 UConn segments in the last 2 weeks. We did the offseason grade. We did the Hurley extension. We did whatever. But this program is operating at just such a high level right now. And a couple of things about where UConn is. One, as we've discussed, I think any kid that's serious about basketball has to consider UConn. Because what is the hole? What is the knock on UConn? You're winning at the highest level, but you're also being prepared for the pros. Can't say you're not being prepared for the pros. They just had 4 kids drafted. By the way, every time I look up, Cam Spencer has another 19-point game in Summer League playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. We're going to talk about one of his teammates in a minute. Steph Castle's playing really well. And so you look at UConn, they're developing the crap out of everybody. They're winning at the highest level. And also, the Northeast ties, in my opinion, do matter. I don't think it's huge because Dybantsa obviously played at prolific prep last year up in the Bay Area. He's going to a school in Utah this next year. So I don't think that's a be-all, end-all, but he's from the Northeast. As I said, his dad is a cop. He's a no-nonsense guy. You know who else is no-nonsense? Dan Hurley. And as AJ Dybantsa said in that video, you can watch guys on TV, but when you meet him in person, how will you not be impressed by Dan Hurley, especially if you're a player who enjoys hard coaching and who plays with the intensity of AJ Dybantsa? I'll say this. I watched some of that U17 stuff over the last couple weeks. Not a ton, because, again, they were winning games by an average of 64 points. But you watch Dybantsa, man, he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He plays with an edge. He plays with an anger. And he is a guy that, in my opinion, I just think he's perfect for that Dan Hurley program because he has that East Coast tough, no-nonsense approach. So we'll get some information on this recruitment in the coming weeks. And as we do, we will keep you updated. I don't think there's much else to add right now. But he said, I'm going to cut it to 8 right after Peach Jam. Well, Peach Jam is this weekend and next week. So expect some moves soon. One more topic, by the way, if you want to jump in, you have anything to add, feel free to drop it in the comments section. By the way, I see Pamela giving me a hard time that I watch Skip Bayless when I'm working out in the morning. First of all, Pam, nothing else on TV. We got Wimbledon on ESPN. And yeah, we got Wimbledon on ESPN. So that's really the reason why. Got to have something on while I work out in the background. But they were talking Cooper Flagg the other day. But let's go ahead and wrap. Did see one other story that I think is at least worth mentioning. This might be the only show that is worth discussing. But if you've been listening to this show, if you've been following my journey in this crazy media space that I work in, you know, I've gotten to be known for a few things in this world, in this space. But one of them is I was the guy that was deemed the quote-unquote Zach Edey hater. Was it fair? I don't know. As I've said, people think that I quote-unquote hate the guy. I don't think I hate anybody. Hate's a strong word. Maybe hate going to the dentist, hate going to the DMV. But individual people, I don't hate nobody, okay? I didn't like, and I said this at the time, and I'll stand by it, didn't love the idea of any player being able to draw 15, 16, 20, 24, 25 fouls on one end of the court and get called for one or two on the other. I said no player in the history of basketball is good enough to pull that off. Thought he was refereed a little unfairly, but whatever. But I bring it up because Summer League has started. As I just said, Summer League has started out in Salt Lake City, and they're going to Vegas here in the coming days. But I bring it up because our boy Zach Edey has been playing pretty well. Been playing pretty well in Summer League, doing a pretty good job. But I bring it up because a very interesting piece of news dropped just, I guess, Wednesday. Producer Matt, go ahead, pop up the tweet. So this is from Ben Fawkes, who covers the gambling side of sports. And he said this: Memphis Grizzlies center Zach Edey plus 600 is now the consensus favorite to win the 2024-2025 Rookie of the Year at Sportsbooks. And so shout out to the, I don't want to say dozens of Purdue fans, but it wasn't zero and it wasn't one who felt the need to tag me on that. Really appreciate your interest in everything I do. Very, very, very much appreciated. But yeah, apparently Zach Edey is the favorite to win Rookie of the Year because of one good Summer League game. But let me say this before we get too far down the road, before I get all the Purdue fans telling me how much I hate Zach Edey, Torres, you're the worst, you're the scum of the earth. Let me say this. I don't think it's a terrible bet on Zach Edey. Now, I don't think he's going to win it, but I don't think it's a terrible bet. Let me explain why. The reason I don't think it's a terrible bet, this rookie class is PU not good, okay? There's no other way to put it. I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's the truth. Rookie class is not very good. The Zachary Richichet kid who got drafted number 1 overall, not very good. Everybody's saying he's like a 4th, 5th guy on a good team. Alex Sarr, number 2, is a developmental kid. I think Reed Shepherd is going to be good. The problem is he's going to be playing for a team that's competing for a playoff spot. So if they have older guys that are getting the job done, I don't think Reed's going to get thrown into the fire right away. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good pro. Just don't think he'll get thrown into the fire. Steph Castle, kind of the same thing. He's playing with Wemby. The goal is to make Wemby into the best player in the world. It's not to make Steph Castle into whatever. So there's no real good candidates. I still just go back to what I said on draft night. I am just not sold on the vision of what Zach Edey is going to be relative to what everybody else thinks he's going to be in the NBA. I've said it consistently. Look, I don't think Zach Edey is going to be a terrible pro, but I don't think that was necessarily the best spot for him to land in Memphis. I guess the best spot is the spot with the people that believe in you. But at the same time, you look at Memphis, who they have, how they play, everything's about Ja Morant. Ja Morant is a legitimate superstar. Ja Morant is a guy who absolutely, positively, everything should be built around. And so I thought they did a great job through the years of building a team around him. Jaren Jackson, they drafted him. Brandon Clark, they drafted him. Desmond Bane, they drafted him. Oh, by the way, when he kind of went sideways and was getting into trouble, they bring in some vets like Derrick Rose, like Marcus Smart to kind of keep him on the straight and narrow. Zach Edey doesn't fit in at all with what Ja Morant does. Ja Morant wants to attack the rim and dunk on your face. Can't dunk on your face when you got a 7'4", 280-pound guy controlling the paint. So I think Zach Edey is going to have a good career as a pro. He will play in the NBA. I can't lie and say that I totally see him as rookie of the year. But again, shout out to all the Purdue fans who took the time to make sure to share with me. Only other note, I am looking at the chat really quick. Alasso says that he believes that BYU will be a factor in AJ Dybantsa's recruitment. I'll say this, a couple things. One, and we've talked about BYU quite a bit actually on this show. Two things really stand out. One, we know NIL is not going to be an issue. We had Fran Fraschilla on the show a few weeks ago. Fran was like, dude, they're an NBA team right now. Ryan Smith, the Jazz owner, is basically the owner, the fundraiser, the financial arm of BYU basketball. Kevin Young, pro system. And also with AJ Dybantsa, he's playing college ball in Utah. So he can get to that campus. I'm not a Utah geography expert, but I think he can get to that campus pretty regularly, something you won't be able to do for UConn or for Arkansas or for Kentucky or for whatever. So I just bring it up. AJ Dybantsa is his recruitment is certainly ramping up, but I think it's time for us to ramp down. Trying to think of anything else caught my eye. Again, shout out to Leslie who said, Torres, why aren't you talking Dion? Dion went quiet at media days today. So I know Dion's going to have plenty to say, and we're going to get to that as time goes on. But I'll tell you what, it is time, I do believe, for me to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music. Also, if you're not subscribed on the YouTube channel, make sure to hit that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen because we're rolling on strong. Going to go through the summer, get us to football, plenty of football to talk about. As basketball stuff pops up, we'll continue to talk about it, but we ain't slowing down. So make sure to subscribe. By the way, we just crossed 42,000 subscribers. So I appreciate everybody's support. You want to help me get to 43 before the end of the week, before the end of the month? I think we can make it happen. Not without your support, though. Thank you again. Time for me to get out of here. Thank you, everybody, for your support. And we'll do it again. Probably one more show before the end of the week. Appreciate everybody. Time for me to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head. You're the Lakers coach now. Unblock me, bro. It's over. I won the argument. I may know more than basketball than you. That's up for debate. We back. New episode